The honourable member for Elmwood-Transcona.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm rising tonight in the House of Commons on behalf of the over 3,000 employees of Canadian Nuclear Laboratories who are concerned about their pension. These are skilled employees. They used to be employees of Atomic Energy Canada, but under the former Harper government, a decision was made to privatize the management and operations of AECL assets, and so the employees now are employees of CNL. And in September, there was a three-year grace period where they would continue to be included in the public service pension plan, and at the end of that period, they would then be thrown into some new plan, as yet undefined at the time that the contract was signed, under the private operator, Mr. Speaker. So it's been of great concern to them that they're going to end up with an inferior pension plan. I've asked in the House before if the government will intervene. The unions representing these workers, the workers themselves, have asked the government to intervene and essentially just extend the arrangement that has been going on now for the last 3 years, where the employees are able to continue contributing to that plan, and the private contractor that's been hired to do the management makes the employer contribution. So there's very little cost to government in order to continue this arrangement, but the consequences for workers is potentially quite severe if they're kicked out of this plan, Mr. Speaker. And it's not just the consequences for the workers. I've heard from the CNL employees who work in Manitoba at the Pinawa site, which some members may know is going to be decommissioned in the coming years, that as employees realize that they're going to be kicked out of this pension plan and they're no longer going to be contributing to a good pension, and extra years of service won't matter with respect to their pension, they're starting to look for employment elsewhere. These are highly qualified employees. These are employees who, in the case of Pinawa, know that site very well, which is important for the decommissioning process. So to have the people with the knowledge of that site look at either retiring earlier than they otherwise would have, or seeking employment elsewhere at this pivotal moment for the Pinawa site, Mr. Speaker, I think is a real mistake. I would inform the House, Mr. Speaker, that those employees were surveyed just this past September, and of the workers, and the result of the survey was that 91.6% of the respondents feel that changes to the pension plan have or will cause uncertainty for their future career at CNL, and this is what I'm talking about in terms of workers leaving. 92.3% of respondents said that the defined benefit pension plan of the public service was one of the motivating factors that attracted them to apply to work at AECL. An actuarial report commissioned by one of the unions representing these workers said that staying in the public service pension plan for these workers is the least expensive long-term solution for the employees and the employer. It provides superior benefits to CNL employees, has the best human resource management for CNL or its successors, would provide better benefits to current mid-career employees, all else being equal, would facilitate any future transactions involving CNL or AECL employees, would eliminate the scheduled unfair reduction in the value of accrued benefits for affected employees, would reduce the pension plan administrative and governance expenses for CNL, would have the lowest immediate transactional costs for CNL and AECL, and would allow employees of CNL to concentrate on their important work. Mr. Speaker, I've asked this government before if they've evaluated the cost to government of keeping those employees in the plan. They haven't produced the numbers, despite a commitment of the Treasury Board President and a committee in November, and I want to know now if the government has those numbers and have them share them in the House tonight.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to start by thanking my colleague from Elmwood-Transcona for his question. Let me say that our government has great respect for the workers of Canada's nuclear industry, and we're committed to doing everything we can to support the workers of our country's nuclear industry. These employees do crucial work helping to develop and deliver innovative applications for Canada's nuclear technology. There are nuclear scientists, operators, and engineers, just to name a few of these important roles. and they deliver a range of nuclear services from design and engineering to research and development. The Harper Conservatives' decision to outsource the running of the Atomic Energy of Canada Limited's nuclear laboratories has had a lasting effect on these employees. And I should note, Mr. Speaker, that this is only one of a long list of ideologically driven decisions by the previous Conservative government that our government inherited. Conservative cuts led to the Phoenix pay system debacle just to create an illusory surplus on the eve of election. Conservative cuts caused the closure of veterans' offices across the country, denying veterans access to important government services. They led to an under-equipped Canadian Coast Guard and much more. Our government continues to be committed to a new way of doing things, to treating Canadians fairly and with respect, making decisions based on facts and on evidence. In terms of the situation at Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, the public service pension plan is not open to, nor intended for, people who are not employees of the federal government. And because of the action the Conservatives took to outsource the operations at CNL, those employees are not federal government employees. In 2015, the Conservatives entered into a contract with a private company, and that contract stipulates that the private company will operate the nuclear facilities and will employ and provide pension benefits for the people who work at those facilities. Employees of private companies such as CNL are not and never have been eligible to participate in the public service pension plan. I will note that we continue to be engaged with the employees and their unions on this issue, and we're committed to doing everything we can to offer pension protection for the impacted employees. As I said, our government has great respect for the workers of the nuclear industry. We're committed to supporting them, and again, I thank the member for his question.
The honourable member for Elmwood-Transcona.
Well, you know, Mr. Speaker, those workers have continued to be in the plan despite working for CNL for the last 3 years. And it's also a fact that the government in this year's main estimates is requesting over $1 billion to fund the operations of CNL effectively. It's going to ACL, and then that money's transferred to CNL for the management and operations of those facilities, including paying those employees. So the fact is, the government continues to pay the salary of these employees. They are effectively working for the government. The government is asking for over $1 billion in order to pay those workers to do the good work that they do, and they deserve to be able to continue to have their pension. So what is the new way of doing things that the government is talking about? Instead of giving them a flat no on their pension, it means leading them on for over a year with meetings with the Minister of Natural Resources, the President of the Treasury Board, and the PMO, just to ultimately have the same conclusion. If that's what a new way of doing business is, Mr. Speaker, no thank you. We'll wait for a new government that's actually going to do something for these workers instead of drowning them in platitudes when they're concerned about their pension, Mr. Speaker. I think it's shameful that the government doesn't even have the decency to report on the number of what they believe it would cost them to keep them in the plan. That means they're making the decision without even bothering to have the information. We deserve to have that information here in the House. Those workers deserve to have that information, and they deserve to get the pension that they signed up for when they started working for ACL and in the nuclear industry. Hear, hear.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for his intervention and his compassion on this issue. As I've said, we're continuing to engage with unions and employees on this matter, and as the member noted, the employees have been able to remain in the public service pension plan for the longest period allowable. The Harper Conservatives decided to outsource the operations of AECL's nuclear laboratories, and to do this, they established a long-term contract with CNL. A consequence of this contract is, as they are not employed by the federal government, is that these employees are not able to remain further in the public service pension plan. As I said, we are committed to doing everything we can to offer pension protection for the impacted employees. I thank the member again for his questions.